The Unholy Trinity Podcast. 3 Blues, 3 Opinions, 1 Everton Podcast.
Welcome back to the second part of today's Unholy Trinity Podcast. And in terms of attacking, like I said, Everton have struggled at times. Obviously, we had a great performance against Crystal Palace, scored 3 goals, looked fantastic, created chances, scored 3 really good goals. We see against Fulham some more consistency again, where we didn't look particularly, or we didn't have an attacking threat second half. And, a lot of that for me stems from, I think players just not being brave enough at times and not showing that consistency. In the transfer window, the fact we were linked with players like Kudus, as an example, and Mudryk from Shakhtar Donetsk, two real quality young players, both done well in the Champions League this season. Both have been obviously highly televised, and you saw the goal that Mudryk scored against Celtic in midweek. What a fantastic goal that was! So real quality players that we were linked to, and we were on the verge of getting Kudus across the line. So the manager knows that the final third is a real struggle, and if you put one of those players in there, Everton become a different side. And like you said before, Pete, no Richarlison there is a big loss, and there's never been any. Richarlison's not been replaced. We brought in Neil Maupay, Dwight McNeil, and there's been no like-for-like replacements for Richarlison. Difficult player to replicate, granted, but Kudus, Mudryk, those kind of players, I think could make a real difference. And that's why we were linked to them in the summer, because the manager knows we've got to improve our creative aspect, our creative side. And at the moment, Pete, and Anthony Gordon, Demarai Gray started the season pretty well. We saw against Palace, Anthony Gordon, I thought, was returning to a little bit of form, because he's really struggled for me in the last few weeks. Which, listen, I get it, he's a young player. He's learned this trade. I said it last week. The kid carried us at times last season and got us over the line, in my opinion. It's just through sheer effort and work rate. And we put a lot of pressure on his shoulders last season. So now it's time for him to develop, and he needs our support. But both him and Demarai Gray, they struggle, don't they? They have a lack of consistency at times to actually carry a little bit of form from one game to the next.
Yeah, I mean, I partially agree with that. I'd say I agree with that 50%, because I think squad depth has a big role to play as well, because not that I'm saying there's any easy position on the pitch to play, but I think for those forward wide players, whether it's in a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, I think what you're asking of those players over 90 minutes is just constant bursts of energy and acceleration, and using the ball well and getting us on the front foot. And sometimes, particularly when you look at the second half against Fulham, how deep we were. Anthony Gordon or Demarai Gray, they're picking up the ball at the corner of the 18-yard box and having to run us up the pitch. So I think a valid question is, a valid point is, ideally we would have more scope to rotate. And I don't think either of them would be playing anywhere near as much football as they have been for us. And I think, like you allude to, Mike, I think then that starts to have an impact on performances. And maybe there's an argument that it's a bit of a vicious circle. If you're not on your game, you're playing in that kind of position, it starts to affect your game. And I think ideally you want a big squad where you can maybe take one or two of those players out for a little bit, or control the amount of football they're playing for you. And for one reason or another, we're not in that position at the moment. But if you look at what we've done with our midfield three, we've done exactly that. And we've got the ability to bring someone like James Garner on, who can perform at a level, arguably as good as, Idrissa Gana Gueye. When Garner goes off, you don't find yourself thinking, oh no. You think, great, James Garner's coming on. And from what we've seen from him so far, he's solid. He plays the right passes. You've got confidence in him. And I think sometimes when Anthony Gordon or Demarai Gray go off, we were discussing last week, Dwight McNeil, he's been a great player for us so far, but he's a different kind of player. And I think we're not able to make those sort of like-for-like swaps at the moment. And again, over time, when we're able to add to our squad, hopefully it'll benefit those players as well. But I think just the expectation on two young lads, and the amount of fatigue, the amount of football they're having to play, it's going to start taking a bit of a toll.
I think you're right, and I think it's been really easy to predict Everton start 11 over the last few weeks. I mean, it's been that easy on the Fan Hub app where you can win a free pint every time you get it right. I've got about a night's worth of ale there, and I don't even drink on the app. That's how easy it's been, because the rotation now, you always want to play your strongest side, of course you do. But when players aren't maybe in form, so as an example, without singling these lads out, the Gray does dip at times. Anthony Gordon does dip at times, and I'm understanding of the reasons behind that. Like you mentioned, Pete, I think it's a great point. The fact that week in, week out, those two are the ones who will start every single week. Dwight McNeil has started a few games when he's had to. Obviously, Anthony Gordon has served a suspension already as well. But those two lads have basically now are in our start 11 week in, week out, without the prospect, really, let's be honest, of Dwight McNeil coming in. If they're all fit, those two lads start. Now, that is where, obviously, we mentioned about making improvements in the transfer window, where we didn't quite get it across the line. Because if you're sitting here now with those two lads, with Dwight McNeil, with Kudus, okay, Kudus plays a little bit more central, but he could play wide in that front three if he wants, a Mudryk, those kind of players. If you had that kind of quality as well, and you've got 4 wide players or 5 wide players, you think, bloody hell, we've got an abundance of riches here. That also means that players can step up the game. So I think as well, Pete, when we say about them starting week in, week out, and because they've got to, I think complacency can also set in as well, because they know they will start. And I think it's really important that we look to address that. But Chris, what are your thoughts on it? And do you agree with what Pete's saying there? Because they're going to be starting every single week because there's really no other option. That's why we're seeing little dips in performances, fatigue, things like that do come into play.
Yeah, definitely. And Pete's right. But who really have we got to replace them? Yeah, we do have Dwight McNeil, and I'd actually like to see McNeil play a bit more now. Calvert-Lewin being back, we all know that McNeil's got a good left foot. I'd like to see maybe we drop either Gray or Gordon for the game, and I'd like to see McNeil play a bit more on the left, because we know he's left-footed. He's very left-footed, and I'd like to see a bit more of that. And I think that could probably help Calvert-Lewin if we could get McNeil up a bit forward instead of being pushed back so much. But I do agree, because really, if you look at the bench, we've got more midfielders. Like was it last season, we had more defenders on the bench than we had any other position. So now we have more midfielders.
Goalkeepers, Chris. We have about 5 goalkeepers on the bench last season.
Yeah, half a dozen goalkeepers, throw them on as well, we might as well. But we haven't got anyone really, if you look. And I mean, people will go and scoff, say, about the youth players, but I think we've done the right thing this season and given them chances to shine under other clubs at a level where they can build themselves. So maybe possibly in the next 12, 18 months break into the first team or be on the fringes of it at least. Yeah, I just think, they probably are fatigued, and there isn't any, he's going to take my position now. There's nothing like that. Is there? I feel myself, I don't think Gordon and Gray feel threatened by Dwight McNeil personally. And I think that's what they need to feel. You've got to fight for your position. Like you say, you look at the midfield, you look at defence. There's players multiply for the positions that we have now. So they are fighting for the positions. When you go further up the field, there's nothing really there to fight for. So you know exactly what happens. Like half-arse training, not saying they do, but you have that mentality. You half-arse training and then go, I know I'll be in the squad come Saturday, Sunday.
I think I'd like to see Dwight McNeil given the nod in probably a home game. We've seen him coming obviously away from home, and I'd like to see him given the nod. Now he's after a great cameo against Crystal Palace, where I thought obviously scored a great goal, but he's shown his defensive ability as a defensive winger. I'd like to see him now with Dom from the off, like you say, use that left foot, whip some great balls in. Play off the right as well. Put them. Keep on switching with whoever else is on the other side, and look to find Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He'll thrive off those kind of, balls that he can deliver. We've seen him do it. I think he's probably our best corner taker, to be honest. We've seen how well he can strike a ball, especially in the friendly against Dynamo Kiev. Scored a great goal against Southampton, which he caught the ball really well. He's a pure striker of a football. and can pick out a man. So I think his time will come, and maybe it'll come against Leicester next weekend, which would be interesting to see how that plays out. But it gives you a little bit of a different dimension than what a Gordon and Gray, wing attack actually gives you. And obviously with the return now of Nathan Patterson, who I fully expect to probably get the nod against Leicester. I think a decent sort of 25 minutes yesterday on his return. I think it gives the side a different dimension yet again, because you've got then an attacking fullback behind either a McNeil, Gordon, or Gray. So that changes things up. But I think in January, I think we will see, assuming the club have got a little bit of room there in terms of finances, I think we will see movements in the market for a wide player, because I think it changes the side. I think if you've, like we've said, you've got that competition, if you've got players then having to sort of, be on the toes and be at it all the time. And, we're not here to question players' attitudes, but I think when they've got a player behind them or they're not as sure to be starting a game, we've said it with other players as well. There's competition in the squad now in certain areas. Midfield is probably, like you said, is the key. When you've got, you've got your starter midfield three, but you've got James Garner, who made a vital interception yesterday as well, came on, looked neat and tidy as he always does. Tom Davis, who when he's played this season, I think has performed particularly well. Abdoulaye Doucouré, who was nailed on to start week in, week out, only probably 12 months ago. You've got three players there waiting to come in. So there's competition there. That competition has got to move forward now. Dominic Calvert-Lewin will always start at this moment in time. Dwight McNeil, unlucky, probably maybe not to, but Anthony Gordon and Demarai Gray will always start pretty much week in, week out. So we've got to now look to address that situation. But like we say, patience is needed in our situation. A lot of work needs to be done in terms of recruitment and bringing the right players in and making us more of an attacking force. I think at home, with the crowd behind them, we play that slightly more open football, whereas we're less inclined to, when we go away, we're less inclined to go away from home and open up at times. When we did open up yesterday, and in that first half especially, we looked a little bit wide open at the back ourselves and looked a bit susceptible to conceding the goal. But it's certainly not, we don't want to sit here and knock on Demarai Gray and Anthony Gordon, because it's not all on them that we haven't scored a great deal of goals. But we need to, I think, they need to be a little bit braver in the decisions. I mean, even think back, Peter, was it the first half where Don makes a great run and Anthony Gordon gets the ball. Instead of playing it along the floor and playing him in down the channel, he absolutely smashes the ball out of play for a goal kick. It's little things like that, isn't it, Pete, where it's just decision making, make the right decision. And, and another example again, second half, Dom makes a bit of a decoy run and he plays the ball to Dom on his wrong foot. Instead of using him as a decoy, coming back inside and getting the shot away. It's fine margins, it's decision making, but that's what we need to get better at between him and Gray, isn't it? Yeah,
definitely. And look, I've got no doubt at all that they're going to be looking at stuff like this in training. And the squad has been through a lot of changes. Calvert-Lewin's only just back in. It's going to take a little bit of time for things to click, isn't it? But just going back to what you were saying about January and the window, it's going to be really strange, isn't it? Because a couple of half decent news outlets have reported, by all accounts, we are shortlisting attackers for January. Well, not only will it be a January window, it's going to be a post-World Cup window. So if ever you could hoodoo a window before it's opened, there's two fairly bad omens, isn't there? That it's like the golden rule of transfers: don't buy based on World Cup performances and don't buy in January. And it looks like Everton might have to dip in and try and do a bit of business. But if we can match what we did in the summer, and how well we bought there, and how well we've looks like to spend differently, hopefully that's a very good omen indeed.
Yeah, indeed. But we'll keep an eye on it, and like you say, Pete, don't be buying off the back of the World Cup. That's for sure. We've seen it done time and again when it goes wrong. But it will impact the January window. But hopefully, and I'm sure Everton will have targets ready and waiting, and hopefully we can get business done fairly early in January for obviously post World Cup matches when the games will come thick and fast. But our next game, obviously Saturday night, Goodison Park, 5:30 under the lights. The last game at Goodison Park before the World Cup break, I might add, which is disastrous in itself. This World Cup is interfering heavily with our domestic football. But listen, money talks, doesn't it? But we won't go any further into that. But last time I go to Goodison Park on Saturday, we're going to discuss that after our final break. Welcome back to the final part of today's Unholy Trinity podcast as we look ahead to the visit of a much improved Leicester City side, it's got to be said, because they started the season absolutely horrendously. Up to a few weeks ago, people were saying, well, Leicester fans were certainly behind a campaign to get rid of the manager Brendan Rodgers. They actually stopped people requesting birthday messages on the border at the King Power Stadium because they were basically asking for the manager to leave in some way, shape or form. Quite clever, actually. But they've definitely picked up a bit of form, haven't they, Chris? You know, you look at them against Man City this weekend, going off by 1-0. You've got James Maddison, who's been in good form all season. He's a threat. He's obviously vying for a place in the England World Cup squad. Jamie Vardy, always a threat. You know, you got Daka and Iheanacho, who are always dangerous. For me, it was a surprise how Leicester City started the league in a way, but they only brought in one player, didn't they? They lost obviously the goalkeeper and Kasper Schmeichel. They sold Fofana to Chelsea, and they brought in Fast, the centre half, and that was all that they brought in. And so, as much as it was a surprise, because I think they've got real quality at Leicester, I think they're a really, really dangerous side. They've won plaudits over the last few years for the business that they've done. But it was a bit of a shock, wasn't it, to see them where they were, but probably not as much of a surprise now to see them picking up and improving the form.
Yeah, like you, as you say, they always seem to source out really good youngsters, don't they, from the French league or the Belgium league, and they always seem to find these gems. And yeah, it's a shock for them, I suppose, for Fofana going, but his Fast goes in, and he seems to be quite sturdy and solid at the back. So I don't think they've lost too much from Fofana. But then, you know, you look at the midfield, as you say, James Maddison, Talisman, who's all of a sudden found his scoring boots, hasn't he? And, you know, he scores wildies. He doesn't score nothing but wildies when he does score. Yeah, it was a shock. But then, you know, you always think of Brendan Rodgers, don't you? I think he's like Jose Mourinho. He has a really good, solid 18 months, doesn't he? And then after that, things seem to change. And does he fall out of the squad, or this is something there? It was like that beginning of the season. They weren't up to form. They looked like they were disinterested in sort of playing, really. They haven't had major injuries. I know Vardy's been out in and out, as Ian Maddison's had a couple, but nothing major. And, you know, they've managed to keep the core squad together. So, yeah, it was a shock because they have got a solid team. You know, Daka, I like Daka. I think Daka is a really good player. I thought he was fantastic before they signed him. He was one of the players I wanted Everton to go for, you know, back then. But they've got a really good team. And I think now you look at them against Man City, and City always seem to have this problem with Leicester. It's like their bogey team, don't they? And they do struggle with Leicester now and again. And but they put a really good fight up against City. And it gives you thinking coming Saturday. You know what I mean? I think if you probably thought a couple of weeks ago, I'd be probably comfortable beat Leicester. Now I think, you know, we're in for a game on Saturday, and I think they'll go push us. But yeah, I think Leicester will be okay. I don't think they'll go down this season either. But it'll be an interesting game on Saturday against them.
Well, I think before they won the game against Leeds, 2-0, which was the 20th of October. I think before that particular point, you look at the results. Drew at home to Crystal Palace 0-0, got beat away at Bournemouth 2-1. They beat Forest 4-0, but then they got battered by Spurs 6-2, battered by Brighton 5-2, beaten at home by Man United, beaten by Chelsea, beaten at home by Southampton, beaten away at Arsenal. And I think they threw away a lead, didn't they, against Brentford in the first game of the season. They were 2-0 up, and they got pegged back to 2-2. So I think before that win against Leeds, like you say, you'd be really in the Everton camp thinking, they come to Goodison Park after how we performed against Crystal Palace. I fancy us, but they've definitely turned the corner. And, they picked up the win against Wolves. As much as Wolves are struggling, to go anywhere and win a game by 4-0 is impressive. But I think they have 5 shots on goal and scored 4, which it's a poor goalkeeping performance, so they were just very, very accurate shots. As I say, they've beaten Leeds. And they unforced us, and they put in a decent performance against obviously a high-flying Man City side as well. So, Pete, it's certainly going to be a game that's going to test Everton. We've notoriously, we haven't really. I never liked Leicester when they come to Goodison Park. I never have done. The certain sides I've never really enjoyed coming to Goodison. Jamie Vardy, as I say, is always a threat. Tillemans, which Chris alluded to, he's a very good player. And it's one of those games where, for me, Everton, we haven't got to win the game, but I think we've got to certainly get something from the game and look to take the game to Leicester a little bit and not sit too far back. So, we need to try and replicate that Palace performance, don't we?
Definitely. I think it's going to be a test of our mentality, because there's a lot at stake here. If you look at the table, what's strange about Leicester, they've won the same amount of games as we. The problem is that no one's lost more games than them.
Yeah.
But if they beat us, they go level.
Yeah, exactly. And depending on how many goals they win by, they go above us if they win. So it shows you how tight the table is, and how, the bottom half of the table, with us sitting 12th where we are at this moment in time, 3 points behind Leicester, who are 18th. It's very, very tight, Pete, isn't it?
Definitely. Well, exactly that. You think they'd be coming to our place thinking, 1, we can win this, and 2, if we do, we're going to leap halfway up the table. So, look, I'm not saying play for a draw. I think you always play to win, especially at home, and we've got enough to beat them. But it's the kind of game where we could, I guess, we could lose it ourselves. We could make it hard for ourselves if we don't approach it in the right way. Which is, we've got to get on the front foot quickly. We've got to be aggressive. We've got to use the crowd. I think we can't allow ourselves, if we do go a goal down, or if Leicester are just sitting behind the ball and we're struggling to get forward or put things together, we can't get frustrated. We can't throw the game away ourselves, because I'm not saying it's ours to lose, but I think we can make it more difficult for Leicester, because they're really struggling to keep clean sheets. They've lost Schmeichel, obviously. I don't know about you, Mike. I know you're a goalkeeper. I don't think much of their keeper at all. I've seen quite a few of their games this season, and I just think he's really, really poor. I don't think he's Premier League level at all, Danny Ward. And I think we can really get at them. You'd think tailor-made for Calvert-Lewin.
Well, I think you're right, and I was very, very surprised in regards to Danny Ward that he didn't look to replace Kasper Schmeichel. Now, I know they said he got financial issues and they couldn't do a great deal, hence why they sold Fofana for so much money, and they had to let him go. But I was very surprised when you lose, a player like Kasper Schmeichel, who's been a mainstay, who's been a fantastic player for them. For me, as he got older, he got better. We were very much like his dad in terms of how he looked when he saved his shot, and his style and things like that. And I'm so surprised that he's gone. Has he gone across to Nice, hasn't he, in France? He's getting ripped apart apparently in terms of the home fans are not impressed with him whatsoever, thinking he's unprofessional and what have you. And it baffles me, because I think he's a very good goalkeeper. But when you don't replace somebody at a particular level, it will always come back to bite you in the backside. But I think Danny Ward's probably felt that pressure a little bit, coming in, from the cold almost to becoming the number 1 goalkeeper at Leicester, after you're replacing somebody who was held in such high esteem as Kasper Schmeichel. So I think maybe a little bit of stage fright with him, but he certainly didn't start the season well at all. He looked absolutely horrendous, and some of the decisions he was making were just comical at times. And I think he's probably settled a little bit now. To be honest, I think he's now probably become a bit more accustomed to being their number 1 goalkeeper. But listen, we've got to test them. We've got to test them. One thing that we don't do, Everton, is take many shots from distance. Getting around 18, 20 yards, get a shot off, put them under pressure. They brought Son, who's come back in from the cold as well. I think that was his first start yesterday for a long, long time against Manchester City. Fass, who they brought in, apparently has started the season well. He's a good centre half, but they tend to have these 3 three centre-halves. So there's no reason why we can't obviously put Dom Central and our two wide players getting behind the wing-backs. I mean, I think James Justin and Timothy Castagna were the two we played against Man City. So they sort of play like a 3-4-3, but Justin and Castagna are the ones who are going to look to push on. So the gaps are there. I mean, Tarkowski numerous times yesterday tried that diagonal to Demarai Gray to drop it in. It worked a couple of times. We've seen it in previous games. If fullbacks want to push on, that's great for Everton, because that's when you can use Anthony Gordon and Demarai Gray to good effect. So we've got to be aware of that and where the spaces are, but also be mindful that Jamie Vardy is a pain. Harvey Barnes, I think, is a quality player for them. James Maddison started the season very well. So you've got to be aware of those kind of players. But midfield, you've got to win it. Tielemans, Dewsbury Hall for them, both quality players. The three lads in the middle have got to win that midfield battle. It's vital that we do. But I think it'd be a really entertaining game. I've got to be honest. I don't think either side will look to take a step back. I don't think Leicester will be coming to play for a draw. I think they'll be looking to try and, they probably built a bit of confidence in recent weeks, and they're thinking, well, before this World Cup break, we've got to look to get ourselves out of the bottom three, because in terms of building confidence and from a mentality perspective, if you're in the bottom three and we break for the World Cup, that sits on your mind for 6 weeks. If you can pull out of that, even by a point or two, that's big psychologically. So I think that'll be on Leicester's mind as well. But I'm looking forward to the game. I think it'll be a really decent game of football, I've got to be honest. But as I say, last time at Goodison Park before we shut things down for the World Cup. What are you confident, Chris? Do you think we can go win that game?
I might add that Danny Ward's a national treasure here in Wales, may I add.
Is he going to World Cup, Chris?
I imagine so. Who else? Wales haven't got much to take with them, have they?
I think Big Never got a game of Danny Ward, to be honest.
Just for sidesteps here, before we go to the result, what we think is going to be the score. The Neville documentary, the BBC, you're going to be putting out, looks so far from what the trailer does, looks quite good.
So yeah, anyone who's not seen the montage and the trailer for that about Big Nev, it looks really impressive. Obviously, we know so much about him. We've read so much. We've seen so much. But is it BBC Wales it's going to be out on, Chris?
Yeah, I believe so. They haven't given a date yet, though. I've obviously seen it sort of be thrown around on their social media. So I haven't really seen a date for it yet. But something to look forward to if you're a Wales fan or an Evertonian, or just in general want to watch someone who's one of the best goalkeepers ever.
As long as you can stomach Ian Rush making an appearance, because why we found a need to get a cop out on there is beyond me. I know he's Welsh and all that, but come on.
Is he Welsh though? Is he Welsh? Doesn't sound Welsh to me.
Well, the records show that he is in terms of his goals scored, but he makes an appearance. But are you confident, Chris? Do you think that let's test your cult and your national hero, Danny Ward, whenever we can?
I think we can. I think we're a different opposition, aren't we? When we're under the lights at Goodison, and then, as you said, it's the last game before the World Cup, and I think we're all going to be wanting to get 3 points. If we can finish the game and play like we did against Palace, or even better, I think we're obviously going to have to work a lot harder against Leicester than we did against Palace. But if we can, grind a result there and finish, the semi-break on a high with 3 points, and we're looking up, not looking down. I think that's great. That's positive going forward. Then for our next game, I think is it Boxing Day when we return, or was it the week before? Yeah,
so next game of Goodison is Boxing Day. So obviously we've got a couple of trips to the south coast against Bournemouth, haven't we? Before the season closes. But yeah, so last game Goodison until Boxing Day.
I'm positive. Leicester, as you say, they are on a bit of a high. They've obviously found their form. As all three of us have said, they've got excellent players. But coming to Goodison is totally different now. It's not like it was last season where players were panicking or scared to make a pass per se. We're solid now, and I think that they're going to feel the pinch as well, because they're having to look up. They want to catch up with everyone else and try and get 3 points before the World Cup starts and what have you. But we're a different team now, and I think we'll be more confident in getting something out of this. And I'd be a bit more. I think I'd be disappointed if we didn't get 3 points personally.
Pete, do you agree with Chris? You're going for a home win?
I am. I'm going to give you a very detailed prediction. So we're gonna win 2-1. We're going to go 2-0 up in the first half through Calvert-Lewin and a James Tarkowski header, and then it's going to be a nervy second half. Leicester will get one back, and we'll see it out for 3 points.
One of these days, Pete, your predictions will be absolutely spot on. To the letter, goal scorers, type of goal, the works. I think it'd be a little bit more comfortable, I've got to be honest. I think I can see Everton 3-1, and it'll surprise people because we're not massive goal scorers, but I just think after what I saw against Crystal Palace, the fact obviously we are at home, the fact it's under the lights, so we've got this bit of mystique about it, hasn't it, Goodison Park? When the floodlights are on, it's dark, it's winter's setting in. It brings out the best in Everton, and I think the atmosphere will be spot on because obviously it's the last time we'll be there for quite a number of weeks. So I think Everton 3-1. I really do. I think we can see a Connor Cody breaking his Goodison Park duck officially, although he scored in the Merseyside derby and it shouldn't really been ruled out. But we'll I think Connor Cody will be on the score sheet, so don't be surprised. And Alex will he'll be on there as well. But hopefully it's a good Everton win and a good performance, and it keeps things ticking over. And before we go into that final league game of the first almost half of the Premier League season. But that's us for this week. Chris, appreciate you coming on at late notice today. Appreciate you taking some time out on a Sunday evening to speak to me and Pete.
Much appreciate. Enjoy coming on and speaking about the Blues. I mean, it was either that, and I'm watching terrible horror films with my kids, so it got me a break away from it. So
exactly. Yeah, exactly. That gives you a break from the kids. Always good. Always important.
Yeah.
But that is us for this week. So we'll be back after Leicester. So we'll be back next Sunday to look back on that last home game at Goodison Park for quite a while, and look ahead to the double travel week to the south coast. And if you are going down there, I'd probably get a hotel for a few days, to be honest, and instead of travelling about 8 hours back. I'd be staying down there myself. But we will catch you then.
The Unholy Trinity Podcast. 3 Blues, 3 opinions, 1 Everton podcast.